You're listening to Nexxlegacy.
This is Nexxlegacy Radio. I am here with Denia Walter, and we have a guest. As I've opened an account with this company, and I've gotten to know the business side of all things, obviously because we're business people, I've really became not just a supporter and advocate. I guess you can call it a fan of the process that, the founders of Novo have provided for a lot of small business banking, people, business owners like ourselves. This is really like a passion of mine anyways. And I want to not just welcome Michael, co-founder of Novo. You can also follow the Novo brand at Instagram at Get Novo. It's a powerful, simple business banking for the modern entrepreneur. It's empowering small businesses. It's important to have a section where we can be able to start building through specific, not just banks, but programs that can be able to help usher in a new way of going about your business. I guess it's old and new in a sense, because this has always been a tradition of mine, being a bank guy myself, to be able to have a home where you can be able to not just park your money, but be a part of something that is ongoing. And Michael, thank you for touching down and helping us out and being a part of this interview on Nexxlegacy Radio. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys for the invitation. This is awesome.
Well, I want to first start off by asking you, probably a couple of basic tradition questions as far as, how did you get started, and what made you passionate about this process of helping out simple businesses and making it easier for business owners to be able to tap in and be a part of a banking universe that is vital in the development of said business?
Totally. So this is, first off, great question. And obviously I get it a lot. But the real answer to this question will literally take up the entire hour spot. So I'm definitely going to give you the Cliff Note version. To be pretty concise, it kind of revolves around a few things, right? And so with Novo, what we think about, at least what we do with the product that we currently have, we're almost like democratizing access to this type of product, which is usually only reserved for bigger businesses, right? Bigger businesses, more mature businesses, potentially even businesses with a CFO, or maybe people in their finance department to manage all of their banking needs, expense management, et cetera. And so the spin that we're taking on it is very different, right? It's like, hey, let's give the little guy the access, right? And I don't mean to sound demeaning when you think about the little guy, but it's like businesses now are smaller and faster than they've ever been before in history, right? It's something that a lot of people discount, but when you think about just last year alone, there are the most businesses formed ever in history by leaps and bounds, right? There are actually more businesses created every single day than there were babies born, right? So when you think about that, like that's kind of an interesting thought experiment, number one, if you didn't know that. But number two, it's like, guess what? All these businesses are just starting out, right? It's kind of like having the training wheels on for a lot of people who had never started businesses before. And it's kind of like, how do we give those people the support? Because small business is the economic engine behind the U.S. economy. It always has been, always will be, right? But interestingly enough, like big banks and a lot of other financial institutions don't necessarily give them, adequate focus and time because there are too many of them and they're too costly. So they usually focus on either larger corporate accounts or individual retail accounts. Anyways, without me going down the rabbit hole that much deeper, we have a huge specific focus on just the modern kind of mainstream American small business owner. And what that looks like is it could be a single owner operator, or it could be someone with a few employees, right? But what it's not is a VC-backed startup who just, cashed a $10 million check from a venture capitalist, right? That is not the average small business owner. That is not the economic driver to this country. And so we're kind of putting the tools together to give the underdog a fighting chance, right, across all 50 states. I mean, we're over, right now, over 100,000 businesses nationwide across all 50 states. And so we're really empowering this kind of new wave of business with this tool that was not usually given to them. And what's kind of driven me to that is just this obsession with small businesses, but also kind of the obsession with the concept of the underdog, right? All small businesses are underdogs, right? And I'm just fascinated with the idea of giving the underdog the tools to actually stand a chance and for them to create some amazing impact against kind of like that Goliath of sorts, or like that large incumbent. And so that's kind of like what drives a lot of us at Novo, and we've been pretty successful to date. And that's what, keeps pushing us forward.
I think, if anything, what I've learned, and I've been in the banking business for 6 years or so. Obviously, my passion is along the lines of helping others as well. Being in radio and doing this for, not just for myself anymore, it's for people out there to be inspired by, for whatever, if it's interviews or music or something to that effect. It's important. Hearing you talk and knowing, like, I do have a banking history, it makes me feel good that not just, and honestly, Michael, I found you in Novo, like, literally as I'm scrolling through, and I'm like, well, let me just give this bank a chance. But not only did I give you guys a chance, it was so easy. It was so easy to, provide the paperwork that was needed, do what needed to be done, and just help. Because as I'm trying to evolve my business, I know the other side of how banks are, working in bigger banks, and it's different. It feels different. It feels robotic in a sense. So to hear you talk about passionate, underdogs and people who out there, this is important for a lot of businesses out there to understand. So my question to you, sir, is this. It's the simple business setup that is provided by your company. In addition to that, when you hear people talk about it, it takes money to make money as well. And I think that's pretty important. But also, if you could tell the listeners, as far as just the underdogs of small businesses is deeper than just spending money. You just need a support system at the end of the day, right?
Totally. And the way so I'm going to try answering that another way. One of the other things that got us really fascinated about this problem is that the leading cause of business failure, so the leading cause of small business failure, is poor cash management. Right? Mm-hmm. And this is now 6+ years ago, myself and my co-founder kind of diving in, but it's poor cash management. And you're like, well, if I think through my individual life, like, there's so many tools out there to help me with that, like there's mint.com, there are like all these apps, but like, it can't be the same thing, like, is it really that bad for small businesses? So back then, like, we went down that rabbit hole, and we were like, what else is there to help those businesses? And it was crazy to find out that it was very little, right? Like, there's very, very little tools out there to help small businesses. So, like, there are these two camps, right? It's like, either do nothing, right, when thinking through expense management and your cash management, or, like, QuickBooks. And to the vast majority of small businesses in the United States, QuickBooks and accounting more generally is literally like learning a foreign language. And at the end of the day, a small business owner, probably yourself included, didn't start a small business to necessarily spend a lot of time in the back office, right? Like, you want to be on the mic, right? Like, doing your spots, doing your interviews, whatever it may be. Other small business owners want to sell their widget. That's what they're really passionate about. And so when you said that about the support system, that's what brought this thought to mind. It's like, hey, you're totally right? Like, the support system is almost like non-existent, and it's kind of like, hey, new small business owner, just figure it out. And hey, you have all these big bank solutions, or they don't help you do anything either, which I'm sure you could vouch for given your experience. And they don't help you kind of work with other tools. They don't help you manage your cash. They don't help you do these things. And so we just wanted to flip that on its head. And it's like, hey, what if we took this different approach where we offer this fee-free checking account, right? So we're not trying to penalize our customers. We're going to make money ourselves as a business via other ways, right? Like the interchange fee that is charged to merchants, and keep what we call at Novo the foundation of the financial stack, or the small business checking account, to be a totally free solution for these businesses, for that economic driver, right? And allow these businesses then kind of to continue adding more value to connect all of their tools to their checking account. We have a fundamental belief that the checking account itself should be a hub, right, for a small business. Like, that should be the one place these people go to get like a pulse on their business. Hey, I'm either doing okay, or hey, I'm about to have some problems, right? Like, I'm not going to be able to make payroll next week, right? But banks don't help with that. Why? Because guess what? If you can't make payroll next week, that means you get charged a fee this week, right? And so that's where they make 100% of their margin on these accounts, because fees are fees. And so there's never been an incentive for them to change that. But the way that we're thinking about it is obviously very different. So we are trying to kind of build that support network and give people kind of the tools needed in that kind of helping hand to get into it and get to work, and also focus on their work instead of having to focus on the back office.
Wow, this is great information. Michael, co-founder of Novo Bank, is my guest on Nexxlegacy Radio, brought to you by www.banknovo.com. Bank Novo, no minimum balance, free transfers, mail checks, easy-to-use app built for small businesses. And I'll let Danielle ask the next question.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael, for being here. So what do you think gives business owners the anxiety about taking out loans, and what has your bank done to kind of ease that anxiety?
So first off, just to be clear, the Novo product is not a loan, right? So we are a technology company that works with a partner bank, and we just extend banking software, right? So it's an easy-to-use app that lives primarily on the mobile phone, with a debit card as an extension. So right now we're just in small business checking accounts. So in other words, we're not extending loans yet. That said, like, I can obviously give some color as to why it makes businesses nervous to kind of sign up for a loan, if that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Cool. So it makes businesses really nervous for a few reasons. One, it kind of circles back to what I just discussed, right? Like, there's no helping hand. And guess what? As I already mentioned too, like, these people might not have a background in accounting, might not have a background in finance. So when you start throwing out all these different interest rates, penalty fees, all of this stuff, the only thing they hear is like, this could be problems, right? I don't want problems. Or at least most businesses don't want problems. So that in and of itself is going to create a lot of anxiety, partially because they might not even understand it, right? But they know that they need some sort of money to keep running their business. So it's like the lesser of two evils. But then you also have just like what this might impact them personally, right? When it comes to credit, right? And the fact that they might not even know all the different negative ramifications, it's super overwhelming. And so because the banks don't really, it's not necessarily part of what they do to totally explain, like, hey, this is the world that you're kind of entering into. It's not something that they've necessarily ever done or necessarily will ever do, right? Because they aren't an advisor to, those millions of businesses. They're just a bank. And so it forces a small business owner to go elsewhere, right? And where is elsewhere?
Right.
AKA Google, right? Getting a loan for my small business. And then they're going to find all the reviews online of all the scary stuff that happens, which just continuously reinforces that anxiety, right? So when we think about Novo, it's very much, without beating a dead horse here, like, it's always about being that supporting mechanism, right? Like, going into it eyes wide open, hey, this is what we currently do, this is how we can help, and being clear about expectations there. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. Into the longer term, we definitely will be getting into lending to continuously support the small businesses that we service. But that's pretty far out on the roadmap now.
And I think even your knowledge in itself, even as you guys at Novo continue to evolve and grow your brand, and we'll feature that sometime down the line in the near future or whatnot, I think your knowledge and knowing exactly how, quote unquote, the game is played when it comes to how lending works, how, wire transfer, international, domestic, whatever the case may be, little things like that goes a long way when you are doing business with said, bank or said company that drives the wheel, so to speak. Because, again, it brings back to the whole thing that I believe in, Michael, is this. If you create not just the face of the franchise, but if you are passionate about giving back to not just small businesses and communities, companies of different parts of states or whatnot, it's important to have like real honest conversations about not just your banking life, but just what it's going to take for you to grow your revenue and certain things like that. And sometimes there may be hard truths with what it is that you're doing. Maybe you need to do this a little bit better, or maybe you need to pull back from your spending so you can be able to look at it at the end of the day to make your business grow. Question that I have for you is, what's been a, I guess you could say, misconception that some people have when it comes to checking accounts on the business side?
Interesting question. I mean, like, there are a lot. I'm just trying to figure out kind of which one. But it's interesting, like, if you just think about my reaction just right then, like, that almost in and of itself is part of the problem, right? Like, there are...
Very true.
There's just so many misconceptions because there isn't, like, a very clear form of education for these millions of people that are starting businesses, right? A lot of people don't even know that they themselves are a business. And you yourself as an individual can literally open up a business account under your Social Security number. So, just a sole proprietorship, right, without having to incorporate an actual entity. But I would say probably the biggest misconception for a lot of people is just and it's not necessarily what you get from a checking account vehicle specifically, but it's also just the benefit of separating, right? Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is separating your individual life from your business life and the benefits that has when it comes to taxes, right? The benefits that it has when it comes to separating everything and making sure it's very clear and concise what is what. Like, that is a massive misconception because what a lot of people do is they don't want to find the answer, right? So they just get started, right? Selling their widgets online or what have you. Maybe they're doing tutorial service, whatever it may be. And they just get started and they get everything paid into their own personal accounts. That creates a big problem in the future, especially as months go by, as years go by. You're not going to remember everything. It's literally impossible. So it's better to rip off the Band-Aid sooner rather than later and spin up an LLC, right? Spin up a single-member LLC or incorporate some other entity and start separating that just for your own kind of financial hygiene because it'll make it easier on your life into the future. I think that's probably the biggest misconception around it.
Mm-hmm. And also, let me throw one out there as well. Even from, business people out there or, who's opening checking accounts, the assumption that some people have, not myself, because, again, if I didn't have any kind of bank knowledge, I wouldn't have probably known this myself. But you know how, the misconception people have, well, if I open a checking account, there's a bunch of interest that I can get off of this account. But most checking accounts, as far as I know, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, most of the accounts are non-interest bearing. So it's kind of like you need a savings account to build your interest when it comes to that. So a lot of people have just a small little tweaks, things that they may not know because they've never, opened a business account before or even a personal account. And that's when you can find a lot of information, either on the web or whatever you call it, or, or just asking questions. I think a lot of people kind of fail to do that in some occasions.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. The majority of business checking accounts are non-interest bearing. The Novo account is a non-interest bearing account. A savings vehicle would be something else, slated on the roadmap for the future state, but not necessarily something that is like currently being prioritized, just given the massive number of businesses in our portfolio. They're definitely pulling us in other ways. But yeah, I agree with you. I think, the interest aspect, I think it's probably more attractive to different types of people or businesses, right? A lot of people, at least, for Novo specifically, like we never wanted it to be an interest-bearing account, because then you're also kind of going toe-to-toe with some of the other bigger players, right? So some other incumbents or what have you, then it's like, that's not what we're in the business of doing. We're in the business of creating a completely different product where we want people to say, hey, why would I ever sign up for that other product with an incumbent? Because the value I get from the Novo product is so much greater, than the few pennies I might make on a monthly basis, right?
That's it.
So that's, something that we've kept core to the brand.
And Michael, before I have Walter ask the question, this is Nexxlegacy Radio. Michael, co-founder of Novo, is our guest. Also brought to you by www.banknovo.com. One thing that I've always preached and teached is this: it's not, especially when it comes to saving, interest, even opening a checking account or doing anything on a merchant level when it comes to businesses. I always believe in, if we can sit down, have a conversation, and if I have your best business need, and I have a passion to help you grow, then it doesn't matter what the rate is, to me, in my opinion. Obviously, you want to make money, or you want to do certain things, or obviously what's great about Novo is no fees when it comes to checking, right? So it's easy to park your money, have, certain things transpire in the direction that way. But I love the fact that there is an effort being made to help grow your business by just having certain features as a part of the institution that you're a part of, because it's important. It's transparency when we sit down and have a conversation, or if it's, any Novo business that needs to be done. Being accessible is important, as far as not just where you park your money, but how the communication flows. And I think it's very important to have not just your team, but the conversations going back and forth between said business and your team to just make the marriage work, so the communication can be greater than it's ever been. And that's what's lacking in some of the bigger banks when it comes to just full transparency and things like that. Just my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I think you bring up a good point. So I think alignment is key, right? And like finding someone or a business or a bank, right, that you can see that you're aligned with, right? Whether that be values, whether it be products, whether it be marketing, whatever it may be. Like, I think that is really, really important. And that's actually something that I think about a lot internally. And one of the beliefs I have, which is some people might think it's crazy. We'll see if you guys think it's crazy. But I think it revolves around brand, right? And I think brand value is going to become so important in banking specifically, right, as time goes on. And so I think brand value in fintech, so financial technology, will become as important as the brand of the jeans you're wearing, or the car you drive, or the phone you have, right? Like, everyone gains a lot of pride by their own, preferred vendors, right? Like, hey, I have an iPhone, right? And like, you all, you get along with other iPhone people, and you give that Android guy a hard time, or what have you. Like, I think there's going to be like a very similar thing that happens with banks, because people are going to find that, like, hey, I jive well with this brand, right? I know my values are commensurate with this brand's values, and I like that, and I can get behind it, right? Like, you might have a MacBook Pro because it's like, I consider myself a rebel. I consider myself someone different from the norm, and that's why you now have a MacBook Pro, but you also have an iPhone. You also have an Apple TV. You also have AirPods, right? Like, and that's how these things like start as a small snowball. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Moral of the story, like, this brand value is, I think, going to be incredibly important over time. And you're starting to also see some of the big banks also, you know, their ears are starting to perk up because they're seeing what's happening, right? Like, they're seeing what's happening with some of the challenger bank plays out there, like Chime. Chime is now a massive, massive player. They're considered a top 10 bank by customer count. Like, that's absolutely crazy.
Right.
Like, that would have never existed, you know, a decade ago. But like, now these big banks are finally starting to take notice, which is really interesting because they know what they have to lose.
Right, right. And Michael, before I have Walter ask you a question, let me just say, it doesn't matter if you have Mac or if you have a Android, because I have an iPhone and just a regular laptop. We're still friends. So just so you know,
there you go.
We're still okay. We're
awesome.
And just again, you know, and you know, and it's you know, just a testimonial, and again, it's not just because I have an account and, you know, proud partners with Novo as far as just the business account growth and just being a part of, you know, this family. To me, it is I crave transparency, and I crave being authentic when it comes to people helping people. And that's what made me interested and want to be a part of your world because of that. And I just got to tell you, before I have Walter ask the question, that I really and truly appreciate the fact that you all have been very transparent and supportive and receptive to everything that we want to do in terms of growth. And I have to commend your team and yourself and your partner exactly for that, because I swear that's what the world needs right now. We need a lot more of that, and I'm just glad that you guys provide it.
Awesome. I appreciate that very much.
Walter, go ahead and toss the question out to Mr. Michael.
Hey, how you doing, Michael? And I just love all the value that you're bringing with Novo Banking, and I'm actually going to shout it out in my show today. But with the value that you're bringing, man, my question is, like, on the savings side of it, or CDs, what type of, like, investments does your bank offer that maybe it's a little different from other bankings that will be more of an incentive to bank with you?
Yeah, so good question, and the answer is nothing. Right, and I know that you're probably kind of shocked by my response, right? But guess what? We're not a bank, and we're definitely not a big bank, and we're not like the other guys. Our focus currently is on building a better product, right? Is if we start by building a better product, what we call our current product is the foundation of the financial stack for small businesses, right? And that's what the checking account effectively is, right? Is a foundation for the rest of your business, right? You put a bunch of different puzzle pieces on top of that, like a savings account, like a CD, like a credit card, like a loan, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, no matter who you are, no matter what business you run, no matter how big it is, no matter how long you've been around, you will always need a checking account to operate, period. Right? And so that was where we started, like 6+ years ago. We actually thought we were going to start somewhere else, like in credit. But then when we realized that nugget of information, we were like, oh, wait a second. Like, that's actually where we should start, at that checking account level, because the market is way bigger. And that's really where we can help the most people. Because guess what? Not every small business wants a credit card. Not every small business wants a loan or a CD or a savings account. But what every small business needs is that checking account. And so that's when we kind of like really dialed in there and dug deep about, you know, what is the best product we can build. And so another way to think about this, and I feel like I bring up this metaphor a lot. I'm sure you know, some of you guys may have heard it. But it was a quote, you know, from Henry Ford from way back in the day. And the question was, what did you ask your customers before, you built the car? And he said, if I asked my customers what they wanted before I built the car, all they would have asked for would be a faster horse, right? And so I think what we're running up against now, which is really interesting, is that, everyone has been exposed to what banks do for decades upon decades upon decades upon decades, right? And it's almost kind of been beaten into us, senselessly of like, hey, this is all you get from them, right? You get, this checking account with, not really a good app functionality. You're going to have to call in. You're going to have to do this, that, and the other thing. You're going to have fees. But, hey, we also have savings account. We also have CDs. And we also have loans. And we also have this, that, and the other thing. So that's kind of like getting back to the faster horse concept of like, would you rather launch CDs? Would you rather launch a savings account? Or would you rather launch a car, right? And would you rather rebuild that product, the checking account, to begin with, right? Which will change the definition and will change all future perspectives about what that checking account can even do, right? So that's kind of like how we thought about it. Will we get into some of those other line items at some point? Sure. I'm sure we definitely 100% will, but we definitely want to focus on creating the absolute best product we can now to service our customers now before kind of expanding to, another product just to whatever, right, and to increase revenue or what have you. So hopefully
I like it. I like it. That shows that your focal point and your focus is on one thing. That shows that that foundation, that main core, which you're going to build around. So I mean, I kind of like it. I like the honesty. I like that you're centered and your focal point is something that you guys already got something growing, and that's what you're going to give your clients and your target market. So I like it. I appreciate it.
Cool.
That also just the Q&A with that one just kind of made me think about just social media, obviously the internet, and I always look at it, Michael, as a blessing and a curse to a degree. There's a lot of stuff that you would like to know, and there's a lot of stuff that you should know, and there's a lot of stuff that you don't want to know in certain cases when it comes to it as well. So as a company, Michael, how has navigating through all social media aspects of, not just marketing your brand, but just in general, how has that treated you over not just 6 years, but just in general as far as how you go about it?
So what do you mean by that? Do you mean like from a growth standpoint or just because there's so many places for – go for it.
Yeah, growth, and also just in general, just your own personal perception of just the avenue of social media and where it's going, like not just as a business, but even your personal opinion about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other rabbit hole. From a growth perspective, like, listen, it's interesting, right? Like, we're almost shifting the paradigm now. Because if you think about it, like, the way that we talk about it internally is like, we at Novo, we have the opportunity of building, like completely rebuilding what a bank used to be within the confines of a technology company, right? In other words, guess what I don't need are bank branches. But that is what banks have always needed throughout time, are bank branches to acquire customers. Right, like that's the only way they acquired customers, because they had to go into the branch to open an account. But now, fast forward to now, you have all these online platforms where you have this connectivity that you've literally never had before. And so you're able to acquire customers, you're able to talk to your customers in different mediums, you're able to hear from customers, you're able to see customer reviews, you're able to do all of this stuff with way more frequency and way more velocity than ever before in history. Now, with that said, like that's both good and bad, right? It's good because you have the constant pulse on customers and seeing, hey, this worked, this didn't work. Hey, we have to improve this. Hey, that thing is, doing a great job, right? It's also, less than optimal because you have a lot of outlets where people can go to air grievances, right? Like if they are not happy with the product or service. But that is a place that we heavily invest in as well, right? Like we want to communicate with our customers wherever they are. Even it cannibalizes a lot of my time too, because I personally respond to a lot of, the messages that people, send me a ping on LinkedIn. That is, literally becoming unscalable just because now our account portfolio is just so big. And so my time,
right.
I can't really invest a whole lot in there anymore. But having that pulse on the customer is very invaluable. And so, how do I think about social media into the future? Listen, kind of like how I just said, it's a double-edged sword. Like there's a lot of pros, right? There are also a lot of cons too. When it comes to connectivity, when it comes to always broadcasting your life, and when it comes to, just always being kind of like turned on or in the eye of others, like that. I don't even think the human race has really figured it out yet of like what it could possibly be. But that's definitely above my pay grade. So.
I always wanted to throw that out there because it's always a tug of war with, you need it, but then you just want to, have your own personal timeout sometimes and just kind of stay away from it too when it comes to that as well. So, like you said, double-edged sword, I completely agree with you. Michael, co-founder of Novo, is our guest on Nexxlegacy Radio, brought to you by www.banknovo.com. Danielle, go ahead and toss a question.
Absolutely. This is more of a comment. I wanted to say that, when it comes to your social media, I love what y'all do because you guys give out tips. You guys show how you guys do social media right. And the fact that you, whoever's running your account, shout out to them because they network, they connect. That's actually how we got to connect with you. Was through the back and forth. So what do you think that a lot of companies do wrong when it comes to their social media?
So interestingly enough here, I'm also I'm going to kind of deflect this question because we haven't even done a whole lot, to be very honest with you. Like our perspective on social media is a way to engage with customers and also show other new potential customers what we're all about, right? Like it's kind of leading with that brand, like where are our values? And I definitely appreciate that a lot that you just brought up because, we're all about, how do we provide value to our customers or other people? Like, as I said in the beginning, I have the utmost respect for small business owners. Like, how do we, even if we can improve their lives by 1% by giving them some sort of small tip, that's a huge win, right? It's not like we're asking them to pay anything for it. So, that's great.
Right.
The way that we think about it in the future is building the sense of community, right? The sense of community where different people can help each other, where it's not just us producing content, but it's Novo to Novo users, whether it be connecting around shared services or where people can kind of help support each other. When we think about, marketing and our own, internal content strategy, it's very much, chasing this idea of being that financial advisor, right? How do we help these people navigate this crazy world that it is to start a small business, right? The tools to use, the things to watch out for, the, tactics to implement potentially. And then the other thing is overlay that with the different milestones, right? Like, what is it like to hire your first employee? What is it like to fire your first employee? And what are the tips you should kind of leverage along the way? So that's kind of how we look at marketing and social media and how we want to get involved. When it comes to other people, I don't really have much of an opinion just because we're really just getting started. I think a lot of people use it as more of an opportunity maybe to tout their brand. Where it might just be more self-proclaimed than anything, right? So it's an avenue for people to just be like, hey, we are X or hey, we are Y. But, one of the things that we, really push internally is actions speak louder than words, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think y'all focus on quality over quantity, and that is what it's going to make you stand out. If you're only following Get Novo on Instagram and Twitter, you're missing out. Go ahead and follow them because they're doing some phenomenal things for sure.
Absolutely,
love it.
Absolutely. And Michael, if you're saying that you just barely got started, I just can't wait till you feel like you've reached that 50% threshold where it's where you not quite want it to be, because like Danielle said, actions, I mean, amazing. And that's what, to me, you know, like I said, I'm touting this, and I believe in the brand, and I believe in what you guys are doing. This is what set you guys apart from a lot of other robotic companies, you know, and things like that, because there isn't a feeling that comes along with it. Like, you know, my first business banking account through Nexxlegacy with, you know, partnered with Novo is going to be a memorable moment that I will have and share, and my daughter will share. And, you know, as the business progresses, this is going to be the beginning of something that is bigger and better than it's ever been. So those memorable moments, you know, again, it goes back to the blessing and the curse when it comes to, you know, social media, but a lot of that partnership began there. And to me, it's just a great testimonial of what you all stand for and strive to do as well. So I'm going to flip it a little bit, Michael. Michael's our guest, co-founder of Novo, also brought to you by www.banknovo.com. So I'm gonna ask you something on a little personal side. So what does Michael listen to as far as music? What is if you can give me like maybe a top maybe 3 to 5 artists that you just love right now, sir. That you love.
If you guys haven't thought I was crazy yet, you're definitely gonna think I'm crazy now. So I don't really have artists, like specific artists necessarily. Like I don't listen to like top 40 or Billboard and stuff. So if you were hoping for that answer, I apologize in advance. Usually I'll just kind of like whirl you through a life of Michael. I wake up to classical music, and piano. I start my day probably the first few hours listening to like that type of music, classical music, maybe some instrumental. Then as I gear up for the day and start getting heavily caffeinated, it starts getting a bit more bassy. So it definitely evolves to house, dubstep is in there, and a bit of trap. And then that'll last for about 4 to 5 hours. Like if I'm at like the height, have you guys ever heard of flow state? It's like when you're in your element, you know, and you're just crushing work. It's like when I'm in my flow state, some of the team actually make fun of me because I'll have my big headphones on and my head will just be bobbing to the beat. Right? It'll just be like bouncing up and down, and I'll just be crushing the keyboard, and everyone's like, guys, there's something wrong with Michael. But then fast forward, and then I kind of like end my day similarly to how I got started too, right? Kind of on the wind down, back with classical music.
Your soundtrack to your day-to-day.
That's a huge variety.
Yeah, not only understandable, but I get it. Especially when you wake up, you want to be. It's different, Michael. Let's just put it like that. And different is also okay in my book, because I would rather you do that instead of like the cliche. Well, yeah, I love certain top 40 or whatever. You know, I love the fact that it's different. Dare to be different, Michael. Dare to be different.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right. Before we let you go, Danielle, do you have any more questions or what?
I do. One last question. My favorite question ever. What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, my God, Danielle. You saved the best for last, huh? Let's see. That, once again, is a big question. Let's see. So once again, I'm not going to give you the full answer because that will definitely restart the clock with the time on this show. What do I want my legacy to be? It's a few things, right? So like, there are a few kind of different pillars to it. Pillar number one is family. I'm a huge family guy. I'm very close to my parents. I mean, I recently got married to my college sweetheart. So looking to start a family, want obviously my kids. Thank you. I want my kids to have a much, much, much better life than, I had, and hopefully they'll be able to accomplish, whatever their little hearts desire at the right time, and kind of give them the ability to do that. Like, that's definitely a big part of the legacy. But the second piece, and forgive me for kind of like going on and on, but like this is something that I've never really thought about. It ties back to where we started this interview, right? Is like the concept of the underdog. For reasons that we don't have time to talk about, I very much consider myself an underdog. I very much consider Novo, if you could believe that, an underdog. Novo was very much kind of like considered the black sheep in Silicon Valley, just because myself and my co-founder Tyler, don't have pedigree, right? We didn't go to Stanford, we didn't go to Harvard, we didn't go to any of those Ivy League schools. We met at the University of Miami 10 plus years ago. We didn't work anywhere super fancy either, right? So we didn't work at Google, we didn't work at Facebook, we didn't work on Wall Street. And so a lot of people kind of discounted us as founders for that, right? We didn't really fit that mold. So that was kind of an uphill battle in itself. And so that concept of the underdog very much resonates with me, right? And like, I want the legacy to also kind of speak to that, right? And have people kind of like take those chances, take those risks sooner, hopefully, rather than later. And that's really one of the reasons why we built Novo, right? It's to enable people to, launch those businesses sooner and easier and faster than some of our counterparts in the industry. So it's very much, about that underdog and having, empowering people to take the plunge.
And there you have it.
That's an amazing answer. I love it.
From the man. And I went through this whole interview, and I did not shout out Tyler as well, because I know he's your partner in this business. Obviously, co-founder as well. So, Instagram, like Danielle said, make sure you go ahead and follow @GetNovo, and also make sure you go ahead and hit up the website. Very, very important. www.banknovo.com. Michael, you've been a great interview, my friend. Hopefully, this will be the first of many. And I'm hoping that our partnership and support in all things that goes will continue to grow and be prosperous. And you've been great. Even your playlist now. See, I might try that whole classical music getting up in the morning and see how I feel when I wake up too. So
right?
I think I'll start doing that. I'm gonna take a page from you, Michael. I'm gonna try to.
I'm also waking up at 5 a.m. too, so try doing that too.
Yes, come through with the 5 a.m. wake up.
Well, you know what? If I gotta listen to classical music at 5 a.m. and get my day started, you know what? It's good. Because so I take it you're not are you a night owl or you're up late and up early?
That's just the founder card, right? You don't have the option of being a night owl or a morning person. You just got to be everything.
Exactly.
That is very true. That is very true. Very true. Michael, I appreciate it. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and we will continue to help you expand your brand as well. Not just regular. Commercial rotation on our station, but also, our testimonial is really authentic. And I just want everybody out there that is listening and will be listening to be a part of the Novo family and just grow your business banking life, as well as be around like-minded people who just want to help people and businesses grow and have a better way of life moving forward. So, Michael, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, sir.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for this opportunity. It was great, and look forward to the next time.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Have a
All
good
right,
sir.
take care of yourself. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the #1 radio station for the people.